Hello, everybody. Welcome back to some more blueprints. StreamerBot is acting a little bit strange. It's not liking the YouTube chat in particular, although I think that the Twitch chat is working, so I'll try my best to read both chats, but it may not work. Unsure. But in the meantime, I should go over what I've done. I've kind of took a little bit of time and rewatched the VOD of a new Clue book that we rented from the library, and messed around with the little spines of the books that were there to try to get some more information to decrypt those what they were saying. And they weren't hard, they just took some doing because I don't know, I'm not used to descrambling words, I suppose. But the roll the sixes, the very last one, was of course the fixed stars, and that was kind of shown in the book, kind of showing you this is what you're supposed to do. The second one, or the top book I should say, the red one, was what was the original? Tender Cipher, that's right, and that rearranged is The Red Prince. Under that was I think Lunar Renamed, and that was Realm and Rune. And then the third one, the purple one, Uncle Ah, was a new clue. The only issue is it was pointing to specific words in those books, and I really wasn't sure which word it was trying to point to, because it had that little sequence X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and end in one of the notes was pointed at C. But it also said, assume that it starts, the page numbers start from the title page. So I'm not sure if I'm supposed to start with C being the end and go backwards, or if I'm supposed to start at the title page going forwards. It's a little bit strange. Another thing that I did was went back and actually read all of the signs that were shown. And if you lay out all the signs in order, it says Route 8, depart, keep left to Tanner Fork, yield right yellow, dead end, record each stop along the way. So I went to my recording of the train station map that we see in the abandoned train station, and followed that route and came up with the stops that were shown were stop 8, which was a major stop, stop 7, which was a minor stop, stop 3, which was a minor stop, step 10, which is a major stop, stop 1, which was a major stop, and then stop 13, which was major and the dead end. In order, the stops were Royal Station, Angel Tower, Ares Crossing, Tanner Fork, Oris Train Hall, and then dead end. What that means, I don't know, but I have these little notes with me, and that's pretty cool. Hopefully that will shed some light on what we're trying to do. I also unlocked Dare Mode last time we played. So I'll probably start up trying to do Dare Mode soon. I'm guessing what I'll do is I'll try to unlock the Schoolhouse Trophy and maybe the 8th Room Trophy in this run. Again, I don't know anything about the 8th room except that I haven't been there yet, so I'm assuming you need to reach rank 8 with it being the 8th room you draft, so you need to like beeline forwards from the starting room, but I could be wrong. It feels like there's something else I need to do. Yes, I want to get the key from the tomb and then unlock the diary in her ladyship's chamber. Those are kind of the goals right now. That was a big introduction, but without any further ado, let's get into it. I'm also still sick, so I'm not sure how much I'll be able to talk. I think I'll be alright, but Day 52. I think that was 52. I'll be honest, I wasn't looking. Oh, so interesting. You just get this every single time now. Huh. Well, I definitely take the repellent. Sure. We don't have the, Oh my goodness. I have YouTube open on the side so I can read YouTube chat, but, the video part is distracting me. There, we'll just do that. Okay. We no longer have the... What is it? The foundation. And I don't think we'll be able to draft it for, like, another in-game week. The real question is, do I try to get to rank 8 first, or do I try to go and grab the schoolhouse? I think I'll go and try to get the schoolhouse one done. I think it'll be quite the ordeal to reach rank 8, and it might just, or try to reach, like, room 8 by going just straight up. That might be difficult and require a lot of resetting. So if I have the option to do other things, I think I would prefer to do those other things. But I don't have the option to do other things. So I think I'll go for the tool shed. I might, in order for this one to work, I might need to draft the tool shed and get the brass compass so that I'm more likely to be pointed north. But I'm honestly unsure. So to grab the lockpick kit, metal detector, and then I have the repellents. Very nice. Let's try to see how far we can get here. Yoink. Chamber of Mirrors. Well, unfortunately, we cannot do that anymore this run, but that's fine. I'll go ahead and draft it, see if we can get any funny shenanigans going on. I kind of meant to choose the den there, but what I chose isn't bad. I think I will go for the Nook, but I might not go for the library. Oh, I probably have a book to read in the library, actually. Yeah, I would think I will go for that. And then try to take a turn right and face upwards. Ooh, here we go. The Curse of Blackbridge by Redford Ewing. Forward. The legend of Blackbridge is one that's well known to the people of the Grand Realm, for the versions of this tale have been passed down from generation to generation. With each new telling, the story has changed, becoming over the years more colorful, more verbose, and as one might expect, increasingly horrifying. However, with so many renditions and unique personal touches, the task of confining and binding this tale to text seemed an ambitious and impossible challenge. Over the course of my research, I have heard dozens of variations of the legend, and while the details would often change, I was surprised how much of the story's heart remained the same. Yet, the more I listened, the clearer it became that there could never be a definitive version of this tale, capable of capturing all the wonder of the myth of Blackbridge. In the end, I chose to write down what I felt most authentic, the story my grandmother told me as a boy long ago. Part 1. The Berry Picker from Oris. Interesting. Holly. Many years ago, before peace had become a familiar word, there lived a group of rogues so wayward that the locals deemed it appropriate to call their number the Unholy Hounds. They were feral outlaws composed of society's worst in a time when the society was at its worst. And for each crime that fearful travelers credited to the group, a dozen more lay unclaimed. each worse than the last. For the gentry, however, who often valued their coffers more than their companions, no crime could measure more wicked than the group's primary enterprise, high road robbery. One such member of the so-called band of rogues was a boy 13 years, Jesper, who had not been lucky in life, having lost two brothers to war and parents to famine. In the years of hunger that followed, Jesper lived in a gutter behind a churchyard, relying on the nourishment of scurrying bugs and weeds harvested from the cracks of the alleyways to sustain his painful existence. It is not surprising that a child aiming to escape such hardships would take an easy road out, an easy and well-traveled route, paved with temptations, leading out of the city and into the gentry lands where loose purse strings entwine with the strands of salvation and glistening equally with the hope of opportunity. It was this road that eventually led Jasper to the end of his youth, a hidden cave at the bottom of Blackbridge Canyon. It was here that he met his surrogate family and saviors, that notorious gang of godless outlaws known as the Unholy Hounds. Despite the hardened circumstances that led him to this vocation of banditry, Jesper was surprisingly tender-hearted and was often teased by the group for being too kind for such an ignoble life. For this reason, Jesper was assigned the innocent role of berry picker. It was not just innocence that set berry picking apart from the gang's more wicked undertakings, for it was the only duty performed without the safety of night's concealment. Jesper, no stranger to solitude, did not protest that he worked alone while the others slept soundly, tucked away in the cave at the bottom of Blackbridge Canyon. On one such occasion, Jesper decided to get an early start. He left the cave, berry basket in hand, and set out into the woods before the morning sun had even brushed against the tallest treetops. It was colder in the mornings, but the headway dawn afforded meant Jesper could reach the furthermost berry patches without worrying about being chastised for tarrying upon his return. It took over 3 hours on foot to reach his destination, and along the way, Jesper has passed by many a familiar bush, all priorly pillaged and so left bereft of berries that one would have dedicated several moments in earnest examination before finding a single one. Jesper was patient, but even patience has its limits. He was confident that even accounting for the time he lost to this long stretch of travel, his efforts would be well worth the pains. Surveying the patches in this new grove surprised Jesper. The red dots suspended among the leaves seemed as numerous as stars in the skies. Upon seeing such a bounteous sight, he clutched his berry basket tightly and nearly toppled over out of joy. Once he had regained his senses, Jesper quickly made a decision. He would not reveal the location of this newfound treasure. Instead, he would earn the respect of his confidants, who, upon seeing his yield, might attribute the success to hard work. Smiling at his plan, Jesper set off to fill his basket and was making steady strides in this task when the sound of thundering hoofs interrupted him. Interesting. A carriage! A carriage is approaching! The thought of it made Jasper freeze. He had been so enchanted by his discovery that he had neglected to observe his surroundings. How could a roadway be so close? He ducked down and crept forward towards the impending sound, hiding behind one of the larger berry bushes. It was only a moment before the sound's source revealed itself. Within 50 paces of where Jasper hid, an elegant carriage with gold trim came soaring around the corner of trees, led by two beautiful white horses, and conveyed by a stern-looking driver seated atop the vehicle, flaunting the most sophisticated regalia Jasper has ever seen. It was not just any carriage, it was a royal carriage. Even without ever having witnessed such a sight before, Jesper was certain. The sight had so transfixed Jesper that he stood awestruck, unable to tear away as the carriage approached. The little concealment of the bush provided was soon proven unequal to the driver's lofty perch, and upon spotting the boy, he pulled the reins with such effect that the noble steed slid to a sudden halt with precise control.
"You, boy!
Get out from behind that bush, he shouted, with a rigidity that betrayed a modest amount of fear. You startled me half to death, coming around the bend of my own drive and seeing such an unfamiliar face in a place where there ought not to be any face. Jesper quickly contemplated running. The man was much older, and his dress was suitable for courtly behavior, not dashing through the bramble and mud. I was picking berries. Jesper raised the half-filled basket up to allow the driver to see the proof of his words. The demeanor of the man suddenly changed. It was a change that Jesper was familiar with. He had many times seen the same stern expression on the most fiendish bandits melt away when presented with a berry basket. Any suspicions that the driver might have had instantly evaporated, for even the notion of a member of the unholy hounds picking berries seemed farcical. The softened expression even made allowances for a smile. Berries, eh? Say, couldn't have picked a better spot for them, could you? I used to pick berries here as a boy. Jesper took his cue to finally step forward out from behind the bush, proudly brandishing his basket. I know, and what luck I found them. I have only just begun picking, and look how many I have. It would have taken me fourfold the time back at home to procure this number. The driver bent down for a closer look. And where is your home, boy? It must be quite far. Jesper replied with a scripted response. A little south of Tanner Fork, just past the burnt woods. My God, that is far. You couldn't have come all that way only this morning. It was true. Tanner Fork was in the exact opposite direction Jesper had traveled, and while that response would seem perfectly reasonable in a location closer to Blackbridge Canyon, he could see why it might seem less believable here. Sir, I have traveled much further, for much less profit. I dare say that there is no distance yet made by a man that would not be worth undertaking for a prize such as these. Surely you have tasted them for yourself? Jesper felt happier with his response, as it seemed to amplify the man's smile. In my youth, perhaps I took it for granted because I never had to travel very far. And even then, my father would always drive us here in our carriage. I'm ashamed I never had to walk such a stretch to earn an equal reward. It was Jesper's time to smile. Then let my efforts reward us both today. He raised the basket even higher. A taste in memory of your youth, sir. The driver chuckled and removed one glove, bending over the seat to reach down to the basket, and at that moment his finger touched the first berry. The dagger, in turn, met his throat, cutting through a superficial layer of skin and drawing blood. Jesper caught the man's startled gaze. And for that taste, I will have your purse, sir, in memory of my youth. The driver's arm had gone stiff, his chin raised and trembling, more frightened than he had ever been before. Whether unable or incapable of speaking, he did not respond to the boy. Perhaps he did not think his jaw could afford to be engaged at this particular time. Jesper let the basket drop, freeing his other hand to probe the man's pockets. Do not mistake me, sir. I will not kill you if you give me no cause. Though, I will admit, the thought of taking your carriage and leaving you the indignity of walking appeals to me. Unable to find a purse in the man's coat, Jesper pivoted to search the seat under him. Why have you no purse upon your person? The driver slowly raised his hand cautiously, pointing towards the carriage door behind him. Jesper lowered the knife's edge a small degree to allow the man to speak, which he did in turn softly. There's a lockbox in the carriage. Well, come down then and grant me the courtesy of sparing your life and binding your hands. A concession, I assure you, my tender heart, for it would be much easier to slit your throat. The man started to comply, slowly, lowering himself from the driver's seat of the carriage. Once down, Jesper guided him away from the carriage to a nearby tree, where he instructed him to get on his knees and put his hands behind his back. Excusing his inexperience, the man indulged Jesper while he figured out how to adequately bind him. The smile and kindness Jesper had seen on this man's face now, nothing more than a distant memory. In their place, cold, dark eyes displaying no emotion. I wonder, should I grant you the same clemency you are showing me? I'm not sure who this is. Okay, no, this is the old man. I wonder, Should I grant you the same clemency you are showing me? Jesper stopped, surprised by the man's question, but ignored it, secured the final bindings, and then hastily turned to the carriage. With one hand on the door's handle, he turned back to the man. If there is no lockbox, then there will be no clemency. Inside the carriage was surprisingly dusty and unswept, a stark contrast to the elegant and polished golden facade of the exterior. It had apparently been many years since a passenger had enjoyed the passage in this vehicle. This all but confirmed what Jesper had suspected. The driver of this carriage was not a liveried servant in the employment of some greater master. Any curiosity that this observation might have further produced was quickly abandoned upon seeing what was rested under the carriage's back seat, a large wooden lockbox. Despite its hefty appearance, the box was surprisingly easy to handle. With a few minutes, Jesper had dislodged it from its hold and carried it into the sunlight, inspecting the box carefully. Two observations were made. Totemic symbols found carved on all four sides of the box hinted that the box was very old and likely not created by Orindian hands. It reminded him of artifacts from the old world and was presumably crafted in one of the ancient realms. Secondly, the box was secured by a rusted yet robust padlock and would not open easily without a key. Jesper looked over to see the driver quietly observing from his indentured position. Do you perhaps have a key you can provide me to open this box? Without emotion, the driver replied, There is no key to that box. Jesper stood up. Easy enough, then. Here's a picture of the box here. Can't particularly make anything out. Note yet. He headed over to a nearby rock of sizable dimensions and lifted the stone up, carrying it back to the box. If there was ever a time when that lock had been resistant to brute force, it wasn't recent. With one hit, the stone had completely shattered the rusted lock. He bent back down and opened the lid. Inside was an effigy, a crude figure chiseled from stone. Without too much deliberation, Jesper bent down and picked it up, somewhat surprised at how heavy it seemed given how light the box had felt. Having expected to find something more akin to gold or gems, he looked questioningly to the man, hoping to find an explanation. The driver's smile had once again returned. You are cursed, boy, for deadly is the stone. You have opened that which should have never been opened, and you are cursed. Jesper carried the effigy over to the man and shoved it in front of his face. What is it? That's one. Feeling his disappointment rising to anger now, Jesper tightened his grip on the effigy. When what? Are you mumbling Agentor? And in God's name, why have you no purse upon your person? The man did not seem intimidated. 1 pace. He paused for effect. 12 more, and you will be dead. He only had a second to flinch before the effigy struck him in the head and put an end to his cryptic ramblings. If there was ever a time when the old man had been resistant to brute force, it was recent. Jesper looked down at the sculpted stone figure, now splattered red. Was it cursed? Was he cursed? He had, of course, heard stories of curses and had never doubted their validity in the past, but now that he was standing face to face with the possibility of being cursed, his mind pleaded with him to be skeptical. And if he was cursed, what difference would that knowledge make? A dozen more paces would not be enough to find another living soul, to say nothing of the chances of procuring a remedy. If he did not move from where he was now, he could live maybe another 3 or 4 days, maybe more given the abundance of nearby berries. A plan, if we ignore its obvious faults, might provide additional opportunities for help to come along. But what good would that do? To be discovered here? Beside a body, stolen goods in hand, bloated from berries and raving about a curse that could very well not be real? No. It would most certainly be better to face one's fate now, take a dozen paces, and see if life goes on. But Jesper found his legs unable to make that first step. His mind was unable to convince his limb to waste away 1/12 of his life in a single motion. Feeling the desperation sink in, he hopelessly looked about him for a solution. and if by some stroke of luck the gods had heard his plea, a miracle materialized before him, as if he found himself suddenly at the end of a fairy tale. I will say it's interesting that the book is mentioning like 12 steps and then you're dead and such, when steps are a very relevant part of the game. You go to sleep instantly after you run out of steps. That's probably intentional. I bet there's some sort of hidden message in this book as well that I need to be able to find, but haven't seen anything that would provide such a clue yet. 2 white horses and a carriage of golden trim were beside him, the answer to his immediate prayers. He laughed at his fortune and calculated the short number of paces back to the road. 4, perhaps only 3 if you jumped. He made a quick survey to see if there was anything he wished to grab before taking the plunge. He thought about removing the driver's fancy coat that appeared to be of some value, but the additional risk of undertaking such a task too great to chance. And so, after a profound breath, he took his second, third, and fourth steps, though they were quite large. Seated now behind the horse, he reached for the reins and suddenly realized that he was still gripping the effigy. If the curse was real, then it would most certainly be better left here. If, on the other hand, the story was fictitious, there might be some appraisal that could be made of the figure. It was, after all, found within a lockbox whose typical function oft secures objects of value. Having witnessed firsthand the horrors of destitution, Jesper found his mind equally reluctant to allow his hand to let go. If it is cursed, I die. If not today, then tomorrow. And if I die, what care have I? With that statement said out loud, to the horses seemingly, Jesper took up the reins with confidence. Part 2. Below the Black Bridge. Oh my gosh. Okay. There aren't a bunch more parts. Good. Miller awoke to some light nudging from a familiar foot. Only one person would have the cheek to awaken her in such ill-mannered fashion. Shaking the sleep from her eyes, she glared up at him in the darkness, but not to say a word. He nudged her again, teasingly, then stepped back into the dim. After taking a moment for her eyes to adjust to the darkness of the cave, Miller remembered she was on the third watch day. Quietly collecting her things and wits, Miller returned as she left, waving to her young friend, who was more than likely already asleep. She crept through the cavern's main passage, carefully not to awake the sleeping bandits around her. Like a hero in a book, she often mused. Quietly, she grabbed a bow from the haphazardly formed pile of weapons, shaking the accompanying quiver in the darkness to assess how many arrows she had. She then walked towards the sun-drenched mouth of the cavern, ready to start her shift. Above her, in one of the few trees around the canyon, Miller could see that Ravia was already posted. She waved, and Ravia waved back. Calling out to each other was strictly forbidden. Anything louder than a gesture in the canyon was forbidden. When Miller reached the tree, Ravia lowered a braided rope and pointed it to the ground behind her. Miller turned, following the figure, and saw a pail of water resting beside a nearby log. She turned back to Ravia and nodded, secured the pail to the rope. The pail went up first, and in turn, Miller followed. Ravia reached across to grab the water. Miller leaned back to give her the space. There was not much room for maneuvering in this tree post, a necessary concession for the concealment the outpost demanded. Ravia tilted the pail up to her mouth, dramatically illustrating how thirsty she had been. Miller laughed silently as the water poured out, splashing into Ravia's face. It was a bit too daring and noisy of a joke, and had the others been around, they would have certainly been scolded for the unwarranted sounds. But Miller appreciated the efforts Ravia took to verbalize the silence of the morning. They had been on third watch together for over a month, and during this speechless time, their friendship had grown into something special. Affection was unsurprisingly scarce among the unholy hounds. She had felt camaraderie before, of course, but intimacy, never. From their elevated vantage, the girls could see both the concealed entrance of the cavern as well as a clear view of the bridge that spanned across the canyon. Blackbridge was the link between the Gentry lands and the northern mountains, the overpass that connected Orist and Reddington. Ooh, interesting. To the city-faring travelers of the realm, the bridge was an unavoidable crossing. In the day, the task was to ensure that travelers passed by without stopping. At night, the task was to ensure that they do. Like most of her band, Miller preferred the nights. The biting glare of the sun might be tolerable to farmhands and the bricklayers, but to a cavern-housed bandit it was the source of constant annoyance. In the day there was no shroud to conceal her expression, nor to hide her thoughts. She felt exposed. Ravia touched her elbow and pointed up. Miller, striving to suppress her budding smile, suddenly shook her hand in response. There were many signs that the unholy hounds used in lieu of words, but the two of them had developed an extended vocabulary, gestures quietly forged in the shared solitude of their month among the branches. She watched as Ravia shifted, placing her palms flat on the floorboards beneath them. Muller knew what she was trying to say, but shook her head a second time. It was often more fun to pretend not to understand. Ravia rolled her eyes and turned away, looking back to the canyon. Squinting through the leaves, the two girls held still, watching and listening. It was not long until Miller, too, heard the sounds of reproach. Ravia held up two bent fingers, and a few moments later, two men emerged from the bridge's southern end. They were dressed in familiar uniform, long gray coats with black facings, the white waistcoats, and black tricorn hats. They belonged to the local patrol, the Blackguard. Although not an everyday occurrence, their presence at Blackbridge wasn't an unusual sight. It typically indicated an important traveler's impending passage across the bridge, information that the girls would promptly relay to their leader as soon as the coast was clear. But this report, while exciting, was rarely acted upon. In Miller's 5 years in the Unholy Hounds, she had never once seen a carriage taken in open daylight when the Blackguard was nearby. The men had nearly reached the bridge's north end when Miller heard the horses, faintly at first, but growing louder with each passing moment. Ravi's eyes met Miller's, the same concerned mirror in each other's expression. This did not sound like the typical carriage. Cautiously approaching the bridge to cross, instead of the familiar crunch of the high road's gravel, they heard the harsh clattering of hoofbeats against stone. Both girls quietly redirected their attention downwards, looking through the foliage. The sounds were not coming from the high road, but from the canyon itself. The horses were coming from below the bridge. In an instant, Miller's hand knocked an arrow and drew her bow. Go. Ravi was gone before the whisper had even left Miller's mouth. The young scout was already sliding down the bank below, racing towards the cave. There was no road that ran below the canyon. There was no reason for numerous horses to be approaching their cave. There was only one reasonable conclusion, and both the girls had reached it instantly. The base had been compromised. This was a Blackguard attack. The moment the horses came to view, Miller let loose her first arrow. She was surprised to see a carriage. She had expected cavalry. Before she even finished processing that thought, her second arrow was in the air. Without a trail, it would be unthinkable for a carriage to traverse such rough terrain, yet she watched as the wheels jolted over the rocky riverbed. A third arrow was now in flight, and there would be no need for a fourth. The driver slumped over just moments before the vehicle dipped into a small ditch, slamming into the embankment. The force of this sudden halt immediately shattered the front two wheels and catapulted the driver from his seat. Utterly confused, Miller quickly glanced over her shoulder to see if any horses were also approaching from the rear. Down the canyon, the entire horde of the unholy hounds came spilling forth from the earth as if hell itself had suddenly sprung open. The group seemed even more bewildered than Miller, half asleep and tripping over one another in a desperate attempt to engage an unseen enemy in combats. Miller could see Ravia among their number, the only one looking up at her. Her expression was chilling. There would be no need for a silent gesture to convey what they had both now realized. They had made a mistake. The gang's chieftain, Joffrey Heartslasher, led the others, cautiously approaching the crashed carriage like a suspicious fox would near a baited trap. There were no words exchanged as the group crept forward in customary silence. A dozen or more paces in front of the wreckage, lay the far-flung driver, an arrow protruding from his broken body, and beside him, a blood-stained effigy carved from stone. Guess here's a closer look at the effigy, huh? Again, it's hard to make out what it is. Miller was inconsolable. Jesper has always been her favorite. He had always shadowed her in the nights, clinging to the hems of her every move, the way a child tails behind an older sibling. Tender-hearted, she had always called him, though deep down she had known that wasn't quite true. His appearance of gentleness concealed a raw, resilient durability that emerged in the most perilous situations. He had been a flower among the nettles of this cave, but he still had thorns, honed by a grim past and 100 hands of misfortune. They buried him in the darkness. In the back of one of the larger cavern rooms, he was interred with a berry basket and a silk handkerchief that he had treasured. The mysterious effigy they had found beside him served as a distinguished gravestone, a marker that stood out as somewhat special among the rows of similar swords marking neighboring plots. No one spoke, not even a whisper. There was nothing to say. Miller awoke the next day to a thunderous shaking and rattling of the earth, a far cry from the playful nudging of the previous day. She strained to adjust her eyes, but the choking sting of stirred-up dust caused her to flinch. Panic was in the air. The sounds of scurried footsteps and clattering feet filled the space around her. But even in alarm, the silence was louder. What was it that sounded so strange? Miller closed her eyes tight and used her feet to guide her along the passage. The whispers around her were getting louder, and intense voices could be heard ahead, louder speech than she had ever heard spoken in the canyon. A growing dread grew as Miller approached the mouth of the cave, her eyes now open, wide, despite the dust. Shouldn't it be day? Miller felt a hand in the darkness, pulling at her. It was Revia. The two embraced, and Miller did not need to see her to understand. Revia placed 2 bent fingers against Miller's cheek, and with that touch against her face, Miller felt the same sinking feeling from the previous day. 2 bent fingers confirmed what Miller had suspected. The girls had forgotten to relay one critical piece of information to the others. An hour or so later, screams began, blood-curdling cries of hopeless desperation. Captain Fodrick Lee of the Blackguard looked down from the ridge of the canyon to the collapsed entrance of the cave. Ah, he grinned. Now they speak. Now they speak? Oh, I guess he's talking about the screams. What a story. That was interesting. Well, I said I wasn't going to do much talking, but I suppose that isn't the case. My poor throat. Don't particularly know exactly what that story was trying to get at. But I'm sure we'll find a reason for it at some point. Ooh, okay. Honestly, maybe redo this. And choosing the cloister here seems kind of wasteful. We want to go left here if possible. Ooh, unfortunate. Oh, it is. Let's do some pool games. That would just be... Maybe this is 1/3, so 1/3 times 3 would be 1. No. Is it wanting 3? Oh, wait, no, sorry. 1/3 times 9 would be 3. Aha. Ooh, boy. So this would be 1 squared plus 1 squared would be 2 squared. So that would be 4. And then plus 1 would be 5. Or sorry, yeah, plus 1 would be 5. Squared is 25. Divided by 1/3 of 15, which would be 5. So it's looking for 5 here. Oh no, I messed up. So I think it is 25 minus 5, not divided by 5. That's what it was. So 10. Nope. No, it would be 20. Oops. Oh boy. 1/3 of 10, so 3.3 repeating. Oh boy. Times 20 squared. So that would be 66.66666 squared? Does this seem right? So assuming that is right, I don't know 66 squared off the top of my head. Oh, let me bust out the calculator. Okay, so 4,000. I don't think that's right. What am I doing wrong here? Wait, no. I was multiplying. I don't know what I was multiplying by 20. And I should have been multiplying by 3. So it's 1/3 of 10 times 3. So just 10 squared, 100. Minus 1 would be 99. Divided by 11 would be 9. I don't know what I was thinking there. Spending so long reading that book messed up my brain. All right. So I want to get to the top side of this chamber of mirrors if possible. If not, it's alright, but it would be nice. Take the den, and then we want to go left from the den. Aha. And left we can go. Question is, do we want to take a hallway or the laboratory? Let's take the laboratory. Let's do that. Okay, now press another button. And we can go up. Oh, you can just add more stuff. I don't really want to add another pantry to the drafting pool, to be honest. It isn't the best room in the world. Another wine cellar. Nope. Nope, nope, nope. It is cool how you get permanent floor plans in this room. To be honest, I think getting a second observatory was like one of the best options. Seems very good. Did I already press this one? No. the right. Ooh, this is actually better. I think I want to go back to the start and explore the left side before I do anything else. Trophy room. Or observatory. I think I'll go observatory. Another observatory, sure. So here's the fixed stars, right? So if I go back to my notes here, actually, I don't think I had it in my notes. I had it in my screenshots. Let's have a look at those real quick. So for the fixed stars in particular, it was saying page Z, word X. So if I take it as just X being 1, Y being 2, Z being 3, and ABC being 4, 5, 6, right? Then page Z word X would be page 3. So 1, 2, 3, word X, so word 1, so preface. If instead I go from the back, then it would be 1, 2, 3. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I'm going C, B, A, Z, right? C, B, A, Z. Word X would be C, B, A, Z. There would be no word X. So why would it say assume page count starts at the title page? Maybe you go forward for the title page and then backward for the word? If that were the case, then it would be X, Y, Z, and then backwards to X. So C, B, A, Z, Y, X, and, which doesn't seem like that's what it should be. So I'm honestly not sure. I think that before I figure out like the full extent to this, a new clue mystery, I need to get some more information. Choose chapel here. Another observatory. Sure. Don't really want to take the Southern Cross. Another dark puzzle. Ooh, and a broken lever. Oh boy, new symbol. Waves. Let's figure out what this means, huh? So whatever we're doing, we're adding 6 and then subtracting a third of 1? Maybe it's supposed to be like, you take the inverse of that number, so instead of 1 over 3, it's 3 over 1, so I'm just going to choose 3. No. Ooh, so interesting. Seems like it didn't do anything. Why would that be the case? So 20 plus 18 would be 38. Divided by 10. But with this weird symbol. Maybe you round? Maybe this is rounding? So this would be 38 divided by 10, which would be 3.8. So round to 4. Yes. 5 rounded by itself is just 5. Nope. Okay. So this is like 6 minus a third, round to 6. And again, this would be 4. But just this. Oh, and there are 2 waves now. So maybe with 2 waves on each side, you need to like round to the nearest tenths place. Okay, that's correct. So this should also be the same. Yes. In 3. Okay. So this would be 10 times 6, 60, rounded to 100, divided by 20 would be 5. Okay. 10 times 14 would be 140, rounded to 100, divided by 10 would be 10. Interesting. So I want to go left here if possible. It is possible. Gotta turn on the water. I don't really want to take the Great Hall now. But I mean, I guess it isn't bad to have Great Halls, because eventually I'll hopefully get the foyer. I think I'll just draft this way and try to go left. Oh wait, I can use my lockpick. That's right. So if this one is like this, right? Is there a way to tell? I don't think so. I'll use a key here though. Nice. I hate the garage here. More keys. Oof, that's not good though. Free gem. And I only have one. No, I have 2 ways to go, but in reality, it's more like 1 way to go. So in a new clue, it also showed like gates spelled with an A versus with an I. Showed a picture of horses. So I wonder what happens if I only count the pictures of horses. That would be 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3, 0. So let's try that. They aren't small gates, but they are gates. Nope. What about 0, 1, 2, 3? Nope. Thought it was too good to be true. I'll go for the commissary here. Why are the running shoes so expensive? It's 50% off. Are they normally 18 gold? Huh. Well, I have the money, so might as well grab them. Oh, it only takes it off after you buy it. I see. Boiler room. Sure. Do I want to go for the archives? Not really. I think it is a dead end, but I think I'm going to... no, I'll go for the archives. It'll make future drafting a little bit more annoying, but that's alright. Still curious about that little picture that says delete this, pointing to the archives. I bet I'll need to get into the Blackbridge Grotto terminal in order to find out what that was about. This could be the furnace, which wouldn't be good, but I'm willing to give it a shot. Oh, it's another archives. Does this mean 2 of my floor plans will be archived? Keycard. That's handy. Double archives. Are these the same in each archive room? I'm assuming so. Nope, still only one archived room. I mean, that's just so obviously shining on the ladder. I tried clicking around the ladder though, and nothing happened. The foyer. Big. Oh, I've never drafted the foyer next to a wall yet before. Except for the back wall. So I guess the back wall can't have windows, which is interesting. But this room does. There's the little garage path out there. Casino. I think I'll go for the archive floor plan here. Wine cellar, not bad. Major Nicholas Key 4. Another thing that I found when reading or looking at the VOD of me reading through New Clue is the whole thing that, like, it was a blue note saying the suspect is Major, a handwritten red note saying the suspect is minor, and then a typed red note saying the suspect is like a minor, like somebody who works in the mine. And it said, I believe the suspect is, maybe I have it written down. Let me check my notes here. The suspect is A. Key, which I found interesting that this was Major Nicholas Key 4. But in the office, there's also the Herrings of the Major, so maybe this could mean nothing at all. I've tried pressing all this guy's buttons, trying to make him talk. Nothing happens when you press on the A. Very interesting, very interesting. The furnace or the dark room? I guess it's like the dark room. Here's the red prince. So if we go back and look at our screenshot here, for the red prince it said page A, word X. So assuming we just go X, Y, Z, A, word X would be the first one, which would be the again. If we say like the word is from the back forwards, it would be C, B, A, X, Z, Y, X, so true. Which is interesting because if you do it that way, this is like a an italicized word. through. And write that down just to keep it in mind. Not sure if that's the way it's wanting us to do it, though. If we assume that we need to go all the way back, then it would be... I'm not sure. It's hard to say with this one. I bet that's the way they want us to do it, though. Go forwards when counting pages, go backwards when counting words. That's the only thing that makes sense. Otherwise, assuming we start here, right? Or maybe assuming we start here, it would be CBA, or I guess CBA. And word X would be CBAZYXN. Well, good to know. I'll draft this room from the passageway so we can actually see what it looks like before we enter. Another archived room with 2 gems. Let's go ahead and take that. Ooh, the office. Not ideal, but not terrible. Still unsure. I don't mind drafting the weight room here. Another weight room? Sure. Might as well. Locksmith or courtyard? Let's do the courtyard. So I guess we might as well put this lever, even though it's inaccessible. Actually, the Hall of Mirrors probably really helps. Well, I'm not sure if it would help or hurt in getting the classroom reaching grade 8. Well, I don't need gems anymore, that's for sure. Actually, if I could draft a freezer, that would be really good. Want to redraw. Go to the right. Uh-oh. Well, I guess this is my only choice. Oh, nice. How many dartboards do I have left to do? 4 more. I think that's all we can do for today. Well, let's card it here. And move on to the next day. That was a long one just because of all the reading in the library at the very beginning. Next day.